Hi, everyone. I'm really glad you're here. This week, we're exploring an essential piece of recovery and chronic illness remission: the role of physical self care. When the body carries too much strain and stress, the nervous system can't function the way it needs to. Stress hormones stay high, muscles stay tight, circulation slows down, and the sensory system becomes more reactive. All of that makes cravings stronger, makes decision making harder, and makes symptoms more unpredictable. For people managing chronic illness, this strain has even bigger consequences. Elevated stress hormones, chronic muscle tension, reduced digestion, and disrupted immune function all make the body work harder than it should. Even mild but persistent physical stressors can increase symptoms, slow healing, and reduce the body's capacity to recover. Recovery becomes much more reliable when the body gets what it needs: supportive movement, restorative calm, recognizing physical triggers, and catching early physical cues all reduce the strain on your system. As that load decreases, thinking becomes clearer, cravings soften, and the body can finally focus on repair. This week, we're going to understand these connections clearly and practically: how strain builds, how it affects cravings and chronic symptoms, and how supporting the body changes everything. Let's start with how demand builds in the first place. Your body is working far more than you consciously realize. Every sound, every shift in light, every decision, every social interaction, these all create biological activity. Even when you're sitting still, your body is regulating posture, temperature, circulation, and scanning for changes in the environment. All of that counts as demand. When demand stays at a manageable level, your body can return to a resting state. But when demand piles up through stress, sensory input, long periods of stillness, or not enough recovery, the body starts to show predictable signs of overload. Muscles tighten, breathing becomes shallow, cortisol stays elevated, and the nervous system shifts into a more reactive mode. None of this is in your head, it's physiological. One community member shared that she thought she was impatient or easily overwhelmed, but eventually learned that those were early signs of overload. Her day included long hours sitting, bright overhead lights, nonstop notifications, and fast transitions. But the afternoon, cravings would spike, and she blamed herself for losing willpower. But the truth was simple. Her body had reached its limit. Her cravings weren't a failure. They were a late stage signal that she needed relief. Once she learned to respond earlier to physical cues, cravings softened dramatically. Many people don't notice the early physical cues that their body is overloaded, not because they're unaware, but because the nervous system learned long ago that sending signals didn't help. Some people grew up in environments where stopping, resting, or saying, "I'm tired," wasn't allowed. Others lived through years of stress where the only option was to push through. So the body adapted. Protective parts developed that say things like, "keep going," or "you can rest later." These parts aren't trying to hurt you. They learned that ignoring the body was necessary. But now, in recovery or chronic illness remission, those same strategies keep the body in a state of high demand. Many people say, I don't know what I'm physically feeling. It's not a failure, it's a survival adaptation. The body only sends signals when it believes they'll be heard. If signals were ignored or punished, the nervous system learned to mute them. The good news is communication returns when the body feels listened to. Gentle, consistent attention brings cues back online. Over time, if stress or sensory load keeps happening, the body normalizes a partially activated state. Shoulders tighten, breathing quickens, and attention narrows. But because it's been like this for years, it feels normal. And when the body stays in this state, cravings show up more quickly and more intensely because the brain is trying to interrupt the overload. As awareness increases, people begin noticing that the body sends signals long before things get bad. A tight jaw, shallow breathing, cooler hands, a slight tremor, or a narrowing of attention. All of these are early indicators. Without breaks, these small cues build into irritability by afternoon and exhaustion by evening. Many describe feeling wired and tired, agitated but depleted. This isn't a character flaw, it's physiology telling you that the body needs help. Cravings are often the body's attempt to change its internal state quickly. When the nervous system stays activated too long, the brain interprets that as a signal of unmet need or danger. It looks to the fastest way to create relief. Historically, that was processed food. One member said she always craved mid-afternoon when she rushed through the day. She thought she was weak, but she wasn't. Her body simply hadn't been given opportunities to recover. Cravings show up when the body says, I need relief. They spike when tension rises, oxygen drops, sensory input piles up, or fatigue hits a threshold. The brain isn't craving a flavor, it's craving a state change. One member said, my cravings were my body yelling for help. Once she listened earlier, cravings became far less intense. In chronic illness, the body's systems are already engaged in repair. So when additional demand is added without recovery, the body becomes overwhelmed more quickly. Symptoms like headaches, joint stiffness, cognitive fog, or sudden drops in energy appear faster, not because the person is fragile, but because their system has less margin. A member of her community shared that she often went from fine to depleted in minutes. But once she paid closer attention, she realized that the cues were always there. Cooler hands, narrowing vision, difficulty listening. When she made small adjustments earlier in the day, she avoided the crashes she used to think were unavoidable. For those with chronic illness, the body's tolerance for demand is lower because it's already working to repair and regulate. Early signs like temperature sensitivity, cognitive fog, joint stiffness, or sudden drops in energy often show up before the person consciously notices strain. Once people start responding to these cues early enough, flare-ups become less frequent and far more predictable. Before we move into the details of how the stress cycle works in the body, It helps to remember where we're coming from. Earlier, we explored how physical demand accumulates across an ordinary day, how sensory input, cognitive load, long periods of stillness, and emotional effort all add up and quietly push the nervous system into partial activation. The body is designed for short bursts of activation followed by recovery. But in modern life, that recovery almost never happens. Conversations, decisions, notifications, transitions, and sensory input interrupt the cycle before it can complete. And over time, the nervous system adapts. Instead of moving fully into recovery, it begins living in a partially activated state. To the person, it may not feel like stress, but inside, the body is trying and failing to downshift. When the body doesn't get enough chances to complete the stress cycle, something important happens. It recalibrates. What should be a brief spike in alertness becomes the everyday baseline. The nervous system can't settle unless it senses enough safety to do so. But most modern environments don't give the nervous system that message. Even when we think we're resting, noise, lighting, clutter, temperature, and social cues can still signal the body to stay alert. And internally, many people have protectors that learn to push through discomfort. Keep going, don't slow down. There's no time to rest. These strategies were once needed for survival or belonging. Together, these external and internal signals keep the nervous system from dropping into a restorative state, even when the body desperately needs it. Imagine the nervous system trying again and again to shift towards recovery, only to be interrupted every time. After enough repetition, the body stops expecting rest to be possible. It reorganizes around the idea that vigilance is required. When the body stays in partial activation too long, multiple systems reorganize. Breathing becomes efficient rather than restorative. Circulation prioritizes readiness rather than digestion or healing. Muscles stay braced. Stress hormones linger. Cognitive processes shift too. Attention narrows, irritability rises, and the mind becomes more reactive. None of this is psychological weakness. It's the biology of a body trying to cope with too much load. People often think sensations like irritability or sensitivity mean something is wrong emotionally. In reality, they're signs of physiological strain, difficulty concentrating, feeling edgy, becoming sensitive to noise or light, or sensing internal pressure. Cravings intensify when recovery is incomplete. When the nervous system can't complete its cycles, it sends stronger and stronger signals to interrupt the strain. Old craving pathways reactivate. The body remembers what worked quickly. This isn't about preference or willpower. It's the body trying to correct an imbalance using the fastest method that it knows. For those managing chronic illness, the stakes are even higher. Their bodies are already working really hard on immune regulation, inflammation control, and repair processes. When the nervous system stays activated, these processes become harder to sustain. Many people with chronic illness discover that their symptoms weren't random. They simply didn't recognize the early signals. As awareness grows, patterns become easier to spot. This allows people to intervene earlier, reduce flare ups, and maintain a more stable baseline. When the nervous system has been in partial activation for a long time, it loses access to early internal signals. The first thing to return is sensitivity. As the system becomes safer, subtle cues begin to reappear. Changes in breath depth, slight muscle tightening, shifts in concentration, early sensory irritation. As this sensitivity increases, the body has to relearn what normal feels like. Calm can feel flat or uncomfortable at first, but this is recalibration. Gradually, the parasympathetic system becomes more available. Muscles release more fully, and recovery stops being rare. As calm becomes more accessible, movement begins returning in a natural way. Not exercise, movement. Motion is one of the body's oldest tools for regulating internal states. Signals to move become clearer, and movement stops being a task and becomes instinctive again. Restorative calm isn't a technique, it's a physiological event. Early on, calm may come in tiny flashes before protectors pull the system back into readiness. But over time, the body learns that relaxation isn't dangerous, it's stabilizing. Once restorative states become more available, the nervous system gains another ability, recognizing stressors earlier, small cues, harsh lighting, background noise, clutter, rapid transitions, temperature changes. They start to feel like information instead of stress. As capacity increases, the body begins distinguishing fatigue from emotional strain, sensory overload from interpersonal discomfort, or metabolic shifts from urgency. Internal literacy returns. As these capacities return, sensitivity, recalibration, movement, restorative calm, early detection, and internal literacy, the body becomes better equipped to support long-term healing. Movement improves circulation. Rest reduces inflammatory signaling. Recognizing triggers prevents shock. Identifying needs reduces emergencies. Sensory input affects your body far more than you might realize. Light, noise, visual clutter, movement, and social energy each place demands on your nervous system. Closing a curtain, stepping away from noise, or reducing visual load immediately lowers internal demand. These aren't personality quirks, they're physiological signals. Responding early prevents the buildup that later becomes cravings or exhaustion. Movement regulates the body. Long stillness increases strain. Small natural motions ease pressure and help the nervous system release tension. Pacing protects the system from rush crash cycles. Small pauses allow transitions to settle. Slowing the rhythm to something your nervous system can sustain prevents sudden spikes of activation. Tiny interruptions of activation, a deeper breath, softer eyes, a moment of quiet, allow the parasympathetic system to re-engage. Over time, calm stops feeling unfamiliar or risky. These small moments accumulate, shifting your baseline toward genuine restoration. Your body always communicates before overload occurs. As sensitivity increases, early cues become easier to recognize. Responding earlier keeps internal balance from drifting too far. As these abilities deepen, sensing earlier, adjusting sooner, restoring balance more often, your body develops a steadier internal rhythm. It becomes a lived rhythm, one that supports recovery in a way that feels sustainable and compassionate. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one simple truth. Your body is not working against you. It has been doing the best it can with the conditions it's had. Everything we explored today, how demand builds, how cycles get interrupted, how signals return, and how self-care becomes possible again, is part of the same story. It's your body trying to come back into balance. You don't have to fix everything at once. You don't have to force new habits or push yourself towards some ideal of wellness. What matters most is giving your body small chances to downshift, to move it when it needs to move, to soften when it needs to soften, and to speak before the signals get loud. Over time, these tiny shifts add up. Your system becomes clearer. Cravings lose their urgency. Recovery feels steadier. And your body begins to trust that it won't be ignored anymore. Thank you for spending this time with me today. We'll keep building this together, one gentle step at a time.